You checked it again. You told yourself you wouldn't, but you checked it again. You checked it again. The message you sent 3 hours ago. The post you uploaded yesterday. The thing you said in a room full of people that nobody responded to the way you expected. You told yourself it did not matter. You told yourself you were past this. You told yourself that you are self-aware enough, grown enough, secure enough to not need the approval of people who are not even thinking about you right now. This is not a video about confidence. This is not going to tell you to stop caring what people think in the way motivational content always tells you, as though it was simply a decision you had not thought to make yet. Because the truth is more uncomfortable than that. The reason you cannot stop caring what people think has nothing to do with weakness. It has nothing to do with insecurity. It has nothing to do with how self-aware or intelligent or evolved you are. It goes much deeper than that, and Nietzsche was one of the few people in history who understood exactly what it goes back to, and what it is actually costing you. Let me describe something to you. You're about to send a message. Before you press send, you reread it. Not for spelling, for tone. You are listening to it through someone else's ears, adjusting the words to make sure they land the way you need them to land. You walk into a room and within seconds you have scanned it. Not consciously, automatically. Reading faces, registering body language, calculating how you are being received before a single word has been spoken. You post something online and within minutes something in you is already monitoring the silence, the absence of response, the space between what you put out and what came back. You replay a conversation from 3 years ago at 2 a.m. Something you said. Something in the other person's expression that you still cannot fully interpret. You imagine how someone who does not like you describes you to other people. And you feel the emotion of a verdict that was never actually delivered. You feel your mood shift because someone looked at you differently today than they did yesterday. No explanation, just a slight change in their energy. And something in you is already building a case. This is the prison. And the walls are invisible because they were built so gradually, so quietly, so early in your life that you have never known what it feels like to stand outside of them. The prison has no walls you can touch, only ones you can feel. Here is what Nietzsche understood that most self-help does not. The reason you cannot simply decide to stop caring what people think is because the part of you that cares is not your insecurity. It is your nervous system. For most of human history, not centuries, but tens of thousands of years, social rejection was not an emotional inconvenience. It was a death sentence. To be cast out from the group meant exposure, starvation, danger with no protection. The human nervous system learned this. It encoded it at a level deeper than thought, deeper than belief, deeper than conscious decision. Exclusion equals danger. Disapproval equals threat. Being misunderstood by the people around you equals something your body still processes as an emergency. The modern world changed the environment. It did not change the nervous system. So when someone looks at you with mild disappointment, something ancient in your body registers it the way your ancestors would have registered a threat to their survival. That is why the rational mind can say, "This does not matter," while the body is already responding as though it does. That is why intelligent people, self-aware people, people who know better, still feel emotionally hijacked by the opinions of people they consciously know should not have this kind of power. You are not weak. You are human in a world that evolved faster than your nervous system could follow. Your body still believes rejection is danger. It learned that before you were born. But Nietzsche did not stop at the biology. He saw something even more specific, something that happens not in the body but in the identity. And it is the part that actually keeps the prison locked. Nietzsche believed that most people do not actually know who they are. Not because they are unintelligent, not because they lack self-awareness, but because from a very early age, human beings learn something that quietly shapes everything that follows. They learn that the version of themselves that is accepted is safer than the version that is true. So they begin to adapt, not dramatically, not all at once, in small, almost invisible adjustments. The opinion they soften because the room seems uncomfortable with directness. The ambition they downplay because enthusiasm makes others feel compared. The creative work they delay because it is easier to wait for external validation before risking external rejection. The version of themselves they present to family, to colleagues, to strangers online. Each one slightly different, each one calibrated for a specific audience. And Nietzsche said this calibration, this endless adjustment of self for approval, creates something devastating over time. It creates a person who no longer knows what they actually think, what they actually want, what they actually are, outside the gaze of others, because they have spent so long performing acceptable versions of themselves that the original has become hard to locate. You have been so many versions of yourself for other people. You forgot to ask which one was real. Think about this honestly. How many of your opinions were formed because you genuinely reasoned your way to them? And how many because the people around you held them and disagreement felt like too high a social cost? How many of your choices reflect what you genuinely want? And how many reflect what is easiest to explain to the people watching? How many times have you abandoned something real about yourself, not because it was wrong, but because someone reacted to it with silence, with skepticism, with the particular kind of dismissal that told you it was safer to let it go? This is what Nietzsche called the herd instinct, not an insult, a diagnosis. The herd instinct is the deeply human tendency to subordinate your individual truth to the comfort of collective acceptance. And it is so effective, so thoroughly woven into how most people develop, that most people carry it their entire lives without once recognizing it as a cage. There is something specific that happens to self-aware people in this dynamic. And it is more painful, not less, than what less reflective people experience. Because self-awareness does not free you from caring what people think. In many cases, it makes it worse. The self-aware person does not just feel criticism, they simulate it in advance. Their mind becomes a courtroom where the trial runs constantly, not after judgment has been delivered, but before anyone has even spoken. They imagine how they are being perceived. They construct likely criticisms and argue against them inside their own head before they have been voiced. They feel the emotional weight of rejection that has not yet arrived and may never arrive. They are accused and judged and sentenced entirely in private, by a court that only exists in their own consciousness. And they do this not out of paranoia. They do it because they are intelligent enough to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously. They can see themselves through other people's eyes, and that ability, which should be a gift, becomes a source of quiet, constant psychological suffering when combined with the unexamined belief that other people's perceptions determine their worth. The self-aware person does not just hear criticism. They hear it before it arrives. Let me be specific about what this is actually taking from you. Every creative thing you delayed because you were not sure how it would be received, that is the cost. Every version of yourself you compressed into something more palatable, more explainable, more acceptable to people who are not going to fully see you anyway. That is the cost. Every ambition you held quietly because expressing it openly invited comparisons you were not ready to lose. That is the cost. The channel you almost did not start, the work you almost did not share, the opinion you almost did not voice. The direction you almost did not take because someone whose approval you needed looked at it with doubt. Almost is the word that lives in the gap between who you are and who you allowed yourself to become. And Nietzsche said this gap, between your authentic self and the self you perform for the world, is not just an emotional wound. It is the primary source of the exhaustion that intelligent, ambitious, sensitive people carry and cannot explain. You're not tired from working too hard. You're tired from managing too many versions of yourself at once. You're not tired from the work. You're tired from the performance. Nietzsche's answer was not arrogance. It was not becoming emotionally numb or training yourself not to feel the sting of disapproval or performing indifference as a new kind of armor. He called it becoming who you are, not who you are told to be, not who is easiest to accept, not who generates the least friction in the rooms you walk into, who you actually are. And he said the path to that is not a dramatic rejection of other people's opinions. It is something quieter. It is the slow, deliberate practice of returning to your own judgment as the primary chord. Not the only voice, but the primary one. The question stops being, how will this be received? And starts being, is this true to what I'm building? You will never fully stop caring what people think. That is not the goal. You are human and connection matters, and the nervous system will always register disapproval as something worth noticing. But there is a difference between noticing and obeying. There's a difference between feeling the pull of other people's perceptions and allowing those perceptions to determine your direction. The freedom Nietzsche points toward is not loudness. It is not rebellion for its own sake. It is not becoming the kind of person who performs not caring as a new form of seeking attention. It is something that feels from the inside almost like grief at first. The grief of realizing how much of yourself was shaped by survival rather than truth. And then, after the grief, something quieter. A kind of rootedness, where criticism still lands, where disapproval still registers, where rejection still hurts in the way human things hurt, but where none of it can change who you are anymore, where you no longer disappear every time someone misunderstands you, where the version of you that exists when no one is watching is the same as the version that exists when everyone is. You will never stop caring what people think, but one day it will stop deciding who you are. You checked it again. One day you won't need to, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally knew who was judging you all along.